record on this computer. Ninja Network Building Skills, cohort number 9, module number 5, how to write good introductions. Just for the record, this is being conducted on July 10th, 2025. Good to see all y'all smiling faces. Okay, Chris and I were talking about this a little bit, before everybody got in the room. I would posit that for the sake of easy conversation and simplification, that there are two types of introductions, good and bad. We could debate the relative, right? All things like that come on a scale. But for our purpose, we're going to separate very clearly into the sheep and the goats, right? The good and the bad, right? It's going to be very straightforward. Meaning, a bad introduction, very simply, is one that doesn't get the result that you want or has a low likelihood, meaning it could be a poorly worded introduction that occasionally gets results. It doesn't make it a good introduction. So if statistically that format's not working for you or it's not working at all, then it's a bad intro. Okay, so we're not going to get into the degrees. It's either working or it's not working. So good and bad intros. Okay, so the critical factor is that a bad intro can pretty much blow the whole thing, meaning you don't get another chance to redo that, right? If I pass your billboard and the design, the graphic, the layout, the messaging doesn't either hit my consciousness or doesn't sit with me, that's okay. I might see another billboard or meet you in person, or better yet, someone may say, oh no, I know his billboards, he doesn't have really good, he has no eye for graphic design, but he's good at what he does. Any of those can impact it. But because an intro carries the most weight of all the ways we can be exposed to somebody, we need to pay attention to having it done well. And Chris and I were discussing the difference between the marketing concept of something has to hit your attention X number of times. The X is a rapidly changing number, by the way, because now that we used to say that the human attention span was slightly more than that of a goldfish. It is now statistically improvable less than that of a goldfish because social media and constant scrolling has really done that to us. So the number of impressions something has to make is probably rapidly going up in real time. But the fundamental difference is that messages that are presented to us against our will, ads on the radio, ads on billboards, we've taught ourselves to tune them out. Number one, they're not hitting our consciousness fully. And number two is that we distrust the medium. We don't believe everything we see in print, right? The old Marvin Gaye song, heard it through the grapevine, but believe half of what you see and none of what you hear. Right? So, but if we have the right relationship, and those should be the only ones we're trying to leverage, I don't even like the word leverage. The only ones we're trying to support and be supported by is ones where we're trained to check their emails, right? To read their emails, answer their call, look at their text. How many of y'all, if you're in a meeting with me, and I won't ask you what the priority of meeting with me is, but if we're in a Zoom call, a face-to-face call with me, there are at least 2 or 3 people that if you saw their name on your screen as an incoming call or a text message, you would stop me and answer that call. Y'all have at least 2 or 3? I have 2 or 3 that I would stop if I was talking to you. And you guys are people paying me money. But there's a certain number of calls that come in. It's a short number in my world now that mom has passed and dad has passed. And my mother-in-law lives with me and doesn't know how to operate a telephone, right? So at this stage of my life, it's pretty much Adina, right? Or one of Linda's caregivers that would make me go, oh, hold up. All right. So there are people that were trained, I don't like the word trained, that we have every expectation that we would be responsive to, that we would read their emails, we would answer their call, we would return their call, we will listen to the voicemail, when they've left one, right? And that's why it works, because we're not talking about reach or exposure. We're talking about trust. Meeting people is easy, right? Delano knows this, right? He's been less active since the birth of his son, which I think is appropriate, right? You can't leave mom at home all the time, right? He's got a 3-month-old. But you can go to live event after live event after live event and meet different people at every one. Professionals on the Patio, Delano was really well attended, in part because it was known, because it didn't pull people from other, you didn't see the same people there, right?
Right.
I would, which is not true for a lot of other live events in my city, meaning I could go to 10 events and 80% of those, the people that I encounter over those 10 events, I would see at more than one event, right? The 80% is static. I could have gone to one event or two and gotten 80% of the FaceTime. But professionals on the Patio pulled an entirely different crowd. And they've had as many as a couple hundred people there, which is a lot for a live event in a city of our size. That's pretty cool. Okay. So, but meeting people is kind of a meaningless activity in and of itself. So I was at a live event this morning. Somebody said, somebody was advocating, to engage with me. And so I said, yeah, I'm new to business. I'm just trying to figure out, which rooms are the right rooms to be in. And I said, that's about 10% of the equation. The other 90% is you. Do you have the right strategy? Because if you have no strategy, then it really doesn't matter where you go if you don't have any approach. Right. Okay. So the intro is the thing, because what we're expecting to be passed along is not exposure, it's trust. I can get more faces in my world easily and inexpensively. Right. Exactly. Okay. Yeah, right. Yeah, Tristan said, yeah, once I said that, everybody's looking at the phone to make sure nothing urgent's come in, since I brought it up. All right. And part of that trust is not just, I think Gretchen's a good person, but that I know, and Gretchen knows I know, what a good introduction looks like for her. Right. It's not just trust that I can do my job, which coincidentally is introducing people, right? But that I'm referable. It's her trust that I know what a good reference looks like for her, so that if I introduce her, she's inclined to go, there must be a reason behind that. So you don't want to lose that. You don't want to lose that. There's a gentleman in my world who's trailed off making intros for me, probably because I've trailed off making intros for him, who has made a large number, probably 40, 50, and they all read the same. Fred, Daniel, I'm pleased to make this introduction. I trust you will find it profitable. All the best. X, right? And they will usually get into a call with me. They'll accept my proposal that we meet, my calendar link, but they show up and they always say the same thing. How well, I'll use the person's first name. How well do you know Josh? Or excuse me, not how well. They say, where do you know Josh from? And what they're trying to determine is, how well do I know Josh? And the reason they ask that question is because they don't trust him to know what a good introduction looks like. Right. The first time I met him, I wanted to go through the get to know you part. Right. And he's like, I just skip all that. Tell me who you want to meet. And I'll start making introductions. And this was a couple of years ago. And even though I was already coaching this, I'm like, okay. Instead of going, nah, fam, that's not going to work. Right. And I'm kind of glad I did, because I did meet some interesting people. And now I have this really great illustration to use. Okay. But they're testing to find out, how much weight should I put on the fact that you and I are meeting? Right? How much expectation should I have that this is a solid conversation? And they're hoping I can answer it, because Josh hasn't answered that. Now, it's not the brevity of the intro. Some of y'all have heard me mention this one before. One of the best ones I ever got was from Suzanne Taylor King. And it said, Daniel, Ruben, y'all both do big things. Do big things together. And I replied, I know better than to argue with STK, LOL. Here's my booking link. And Ruben replied, I know better than to argue with STK, LOL. I booked. It has nothing to do with the content, has everything to do with the fact that Ruben and I both knew that Suzanne knew what a good intro looked like for us. Hence the phrase, I know better than to argue with STK. Right. But my way of phrasing that was also my way of saying to Suzanne, it's a fairly thin intro there. Right. But I still trusted her enough to take, to put my link out there. Okay. All right. So if you've got the worksheet or can get to it or can take some awesome notes, man, everybody wave your pen because we got stuff to do here. All right. Make sure everybody's got a pen on hand. We're good. We're ready to rumble. And by the way, that the worksheet I gave you, right? You don't need to fill that out before you make an intro. Anybody. Right. And Tristan, did you get her after I dropped it in the chat box? I'll drop it in again. Oh, wait. It's set for Stephanie only. Did I give that to all y'all or did only Stephanie get that? All right, there it is. Okay. All right. You don't need to fill it out. But it is a way to kind of frame your thinking on that. Who are you introducing? Right. And then this can be misconstrued, right? But it says, what is the objective? What is the purpose? I have a lot of fun, and Sarah lets me make fun of her. We were building an intro for her one time. I'm like, all right, how do you want me to intro you? And she goes, hang on a second. And she gave me a 4-sentence paragraph, which best guess probably came from her LinkedIn profile, right? That header, right? That first blurb. And I'm like, okay, we're going to use about 3 bullets, right? The objective is not to sell the thing. The objective is to get people into a meeting, typically. Could be simply to trade resources, to share some information, to get somebody booked on a podcast. But usually what you're gunning for is a short meeting. So the objective is a short meeting. Now, you can't be as lame as Josh and go, Justin, comma, Teresa, I'm pleased to make this introduction. I hope you find it profitable. Boom, done. You need to identify the objective. I usually put it near the end. I suggest you two get into a short meeting to see if a longer conversation is in order. But you also need to specify the purpose. And what I mean by the purpose is, why do we want a meeting to start with? Do I need what Justin's offering? Right? I need to know that. Does Justin need what I'm offering? He needs to know that. Are we potentially key referral partners? We need to know that. Is Justin looking to be on a podcast and I have a podcast? I need to know that. Is Justin looking to be on a podcast and I know a lot of podcasters? I need to know that. Right? So the objective is almost always a short meeting. It could be otherwise, which is why I included it as a list of, to think about. What is the purpose? You've got to be clear. And Suzanne lets me use this example as well. She called me one day and said, Daniel, I need to know how to, bounce back from this, right? How do I regain the footing here? I said, what happened? She said, my coach and mentor said to me, I have a good prospect for you. And she described the prospect to me. And I said, that's great. She said, I'll introduce the two of you. And Suzanne said, that's great. And Dorothy made the intro. And in the intro, she did what AI does. I don't know if Dorothy used AI or not. And it built, hey, Betty Boop, this is Suzanne Taylor King. She's really great at all these things. Hey, Suzanne, this is Betty Boop. She's really great at all these things. I think the two of you should meet. And Suzanne read it through her lens and went, that's cool. She read it after it was sent, right? It was a 3-way thread, but she didn't see any problem with it when it came through. Her call to me was post-meeting. She said, we got into the call and the woman clearly thought I was a prospect for what she did. And I kept trying to redirect it. She said, I called her out on reading a script to me for starters, and she denied it, but she was clearly. Right. And she said, like 20 minutes in, I'm like, I think we're here under the wrong, context, right? My understanding was you needed what I had to offer. And of course, the conversation, went downhill and ended shortly after that. She's like, hey, how do you recover from that? And I said, you don't. And she said, well, what could I have said in the meeting? And I said, nothing. You could have started by framing the meeting with your understanding and then either agreed to meet in that context or not to meet at all. I said, but like every objection, like every hurdle, like every obstacle that we come up against, and we talked about this yesterday, Eleanor, when's the best time to handle it? Before it comes up, right? If you're not going to co-author the introduction alongside Dorothy, right, then at least have her send it to you before she sends it out and ask if it reads right. You had the context of knowing that Betty Boop was a prospect for you. She didn't have that context. There was no reason for her to know that. There was nothing in the intro that said that. Hey, Buck, I think you need to meet Gretchen. You were talking about giving a good business gift the other day, and I told you Gretchen's got a good plan for that. Check it out. See what she has to say makes sense, right? Make it come together. Right. I'm not asking him to buy, and I'm telling him that Gretchen probably has the answer to what he wants. Right. And that the goal is for him to buy from Gretchen, which he did, which is why I use that as an example. And that's why she smiled when I said his name. Right. So, right. What, whoopsie, started the wrong program. Dang it. Make that go away. Too many buttons too close to each other. What can I say about each one in support of convincing them to meet? Okay. Here's a piece of context that's worth jotting down. There's really, in my mind, three basic frameworks for intros. And you guys have heard me talk at this moment about the difference between what we would call a connection and what I would call your network, capital N network, right? Y'all have the framework around that. Your network is the people that return your call. That if you sent a text message that said, hey, Justin, I've got a question. Don't know if you have the answer, but if you don't, I bet you know somebody that does. Got a minute, that they would reply, right? That's your network. Okay. So the three fundamental frameworks are connection to connection. There's nothing wrong with making introductions from connection to connection. Somebody heard me speak about the difference between connections and network, and he thought the practical thing to do was go to LinkedIn and kick off all his connections and just keep his network. I'm like, well, how are you going to grow people from connection to network if you just cut off communication with them? I'm not saying they're worthless. They're not. A connection can give you a good introduction. A connection can be a good introduction. A connection could become your customer. You might become the customer of a connection. They'll probably have to move through the network process before you get there, but connections are fine. There will always be more in that pool than in the pool of network. It's just the nature of human interaction. So connection to connection is 1 degree, is one framework. Network to network, right? Gretchen, like Daniel, Ruben, y'all both do big things together. And then connection to network are your three basic frameworks on that. And I'm going to spotlight me, not because I have a huge ego, but because I'm about to do an illustration. And the illustration is that, right? So here's Buck, right? Here's Daniel. And here's Gretchen. Gretchen and I don't have a ruler, but as far as my view of Gretchen, I'm at a 9 or 9.5, right? Gretchen's never let me down. She's never not shown up for something when she said she would, right? So we're up there, right? I give very few people a 10, Gretchen. I mean, you're a mom of small children, so maybe you'll stand me up one day, and that's where your half a point is, right? And by the way, you should. The small children take priority, right? Buck and I are at I don't know, I'd say an 8. Now, I don't use numbers like this in the intro, right? Y'all are clear on that, right? I mean, you could, I guess that could be your signature, right? But when Buck gets onto Gretchen's calendar, what is his framework? I mean, if you had to put it on a scale, where would you say Buck is in that context?
Split the difference.
No, at the lowest number, right? If Buck and I are at a 10 and Gretchen and I are 6, he's going to show up as a 6. And there's nothing wrong with showing up as a 6 or even a 5 or a 2. It's better than 0. Am I right? Okay. But you need to be upfront about how well, how thoroughly you're endorsing the other person. Because if you're at a 2 with somebody, and there's a reason you're at a 2, meaning you don't know if they're reliable and will deliver on the work, and you present them as if they're an 8, 9, or 10, and it goes south, you've lost a lot of cred, right? When I say what could you say about the other person in service to getting them to meet, it doesn't mean a bio, it doesn't mean cut and paste their LinkedIn paragraph, right? If it's a potential key referral partner, hey, Gretchen, Christopher calls on the same people you do. He sells something that's adjacent to you, what you do. It's not like you at all. But a lot of the people that he knows in his circle, his prospects and his clients, are very likely to fall into the circle of your clients and prospects. Hey, always like to see a smiling face. All right. Uh, does that make sense? Right. So, what is it you want to say in support of the other person? Right. I've known Gretchen for a little over a year. I'm familiar with her model. My familiarity with her model goes back 20 years. Right. She's highly thought of and by people that I think highly of, which is a low key introduction from an introduction, right? Right. That's where trust comes from. She's thought highly of people that I think highly of. Y'all ever get a friend request on Facebook and you're like, and it says 8 mutual connections, and I'm like, yeah, but those 8 are kind of sus. Right. I'm at a point now on Facebook where I feel like screen capping the invitation request and going, who can vouch for this person? Right. Okay. I got a friend request from somebody whose last name I did not recognize because she has divorced and remarried since I encountered her last. But I looked at our 8 mutual connections and they were all people I knew very, 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 very well. And I'm like, all of these are from the Cutco world. So she must be from the Cutco world. And then I look back at her profile picture and added 20 years. I'm like, oh, it's that Ashley. Like, because my memory of her, she looked a lot more like Teresa than she does like me. Smooth skin, no wrinkles. Okay. All right. So you want to be clear about how you know or to what degree you're endorsing the other person, right? Buck could say, hey, I barely know Gretchen, but I think her program works well. And the person I gave a gift to was super excited about it. So there's that. And that's legitimate if that's what he chose to say about Gretchen at this point, right? Gretchen, Chris told me that he was looking for meaningful gifts to give to clients and was having a hard time thinking outside the box. Right. Chris didn't say to me, I've got a credit card at the ready, Dan. What do you recommend? Right. If he said that, I'd be sure to include that. I gave a lady Gretchen the other day. I said, this woman's calling me trying to buy some Cutco. Call her up and sell her some Cutco. Right. And I put that in the thread, Cutco customer, me Cutco rep, I think was how I started it. Right. And then how I put that in the text thread. And both of them are like, yep, on it. Okay. But what if I had said, Gretchen, I'm blanking on her first name. Who was it? You remember who that was?
Will Ann.
Will Ann. Gretchen,
Mm.
this is Will Ann. I've known her for 20 years. She's super cool. I used to sell a lot of Cutco. Y'all should meet. Gretchen be like, why? Right? I'm not going out of my way for that. But when I'm like, Will Ann's trying to buy Cutco, can you help her? Gretchen's like, yes, I can. Okay. So you want to be clear about, what your reasons are between the people on both sides. Now, in this context, by the way, I don't need to build up Will Ann because Cutco doesn't ship until you've given them a credit card number or a check. So, Will Ann's credentialing means nothing, right? She's either going to give her a credit card number that works or she's not. And Gretchen's either going to run this order or it's not, right? So I didn't need to build up Will Ann in that context. All right. What can I say, about convincing them to meet? What can I include about my confidence level on each of the parties? This sounds like it's turned into a long intro. It's not. Teresa's gotten some from me. Tristan's gotten some from me. Delanor's gotten a couple from me. Gretchen's gotten some from me. They're not long. They're not long. What is my sign off? It's up to you to choose whether you want to stay in the thread. Some people want to stay in the thread and watch it unfold in real time. My line, I'll leave it to you two to connect, is my way of saying hit reply all and then delete me. I don't need to stay in the loop. Now, if they do reply all and I'm included, I don't scold anybody. I file it in a folder marked intros, because if anybody ever asks me if my system works, I can open up the folder and say, see how when I introduce two people, both of them respond within the hour? Because they trust that I'm making a good intro. They know that I'm not wasting their time. Right? Now, I think in Teresa, the case of Glenn and Melanie, it took them a few days. They're frequently on vacation, so I'm not surprised nor disappointed, right? But they did eventually reply, right? That when I connect people, they both will get on board with the reply. You can choose to stay in the thread or not. So you got to, be particular about your sign off, right? Do I need to attach anything or include any additional information? If somebody's got a whole paragraph they want to send, I'd rather link to their website or their LinkedIn profile. This is partly why I prefer LinkedIn profiles or LinkedIn messaging for intros. Oh, that's one that's not on the worksheet. How do they want to be introduced? If I'm dealing with Justin and I'm making introductions on his behalf, so Justin and I are in a conversation, which is called a referral pairing, which is what we're coaching on the next module. We're co-authoring it. I know Justin's paying attention. So my question isn't, Justin, how do you want me to make the intro? If I know how the other person is most likely to respond. How many? I know plenty of people that get most of the business done on Facebook and Facebook Messenger. There's plenty of businesses out there that get a lot done that way. I don't expect everybody to learn my preferences, but if it's actionable and needs follow-up, I would prefer email because I can mark that easily for follow-up. LinkedIn doesn't have a good, inbox management system. So I try to check into LinkedIn or have Stephanie check into LinkedIn and reply almost immediately just so it's not piling up on me, right? I like the tool My Most Trusted / Ninja Connect because it will create the same intro in both formats. You write it once and it'll send it twice. You write it online and it will send it via LinkedIn messaging and via email at the same time. It's kind of cool. And I've got that for you guys, as part of my world. So double check with me if you're not sure how to use that, how to get it set up. Okay, so how are we doing it? Right, and then these other questions. Do I need to attach, include anything, additional information? Could be a PDF, could be a one sheet, could be a link to one of them's websites. If you use an email, go through the extra steps and include a link to the other one's LinkedIn profile if that's appropriate. Sometimes I will let other people offer my scheduling link. Now, what's cool about that? It elevates both of the other two parties. If Justin offered to make an intro for me and we co-wrote it, and at the end I said, Justin, you can throw in a line about how you have permission to offer my my scheduling link directly, that tells the other person I think highly of Justin, and it tells the other person it tells that other person I think highly of Justin, and it tells Justin that he thinks highly of the person that he sent it to, that he's willing to go out on a limb and use a tool that I've offered, my scheduling link. I haven't decided exactly what to do with it, but I'm considering playing with a cool feature. I'm going to buy the website domain, and none of y'all do it before me and just sell it back to me later because I'll be mad. I need to go on later today. I'm going to buy the domain, I know stk.com. Stop it, Chris. And I know nickalter.com. And I'm going to redirect that URL to my Calendly link and a particular event that says, because you know Nick Alter, I'm giving you additional access to my calendar that most people don't have. Because you know SDK, I'm giving you additional access to my calendar that most people don't have. Right? And that uplifts STK and Nick Alter, right? Because it means I bought the domain in their name, right? That my trust level is so high that the phrase I know Nick Alter is the secret password, right? That says so much about Nick, right? That's pretty wild, isn't it? Okay. I like what you said there, Chris. People are going to call us two reasons: obligation, opportunity. Okay. I think we ought to do breakouts, right? How we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Great. 6 people. 3 breakouts of 2 guys. And the objective is going to be to help the other person write an intro for you to a prospect. You'll have, I mean, maybe you've got a prospect for the other person. You don't have to do that at this point, right? But if you had a prospect for the other person, right? So, for example, Teresa, if you and Scott end up in a room, I mean, you and Chris end up in a room, Teresa would say, I serve these sorts of people. You go, okay, I have an avatar in my head, guy named Fred, runs a business, whatever the case may be, right? Okay, terrific. I've got my fictional character in my head. Great. Now that my fictional character, right, with some of the characteristics, demographics that Teresa needs for them to be at least a prospect, right? Okay, Teresa, your value proposition. What does Teresa do good in the world for, right? Why would my fictional Fred, my avatar Fred, want to meet Teresa Scott, right? And what should I say about Fred to make sure that he knows I'm doing this for a reason, right? And so that Teresa can go into the conversation prepared, et cetera, et cetera. Does that make sense, guys? So work on helping the other person craft, co-author this jointly. And one of the biggest keys, by the way, in not using a cut and paste, is if you give people a cut and paste, they may be able to still making intros months from now. And Justin, I know for a fact your business model has changed in the last 6 months, right? You don't want somebody still using a cut and paste, 6 months later, you're like, I didn't even want to meet that guy, right? Okay. Another reason you don't is because they may modify it in ways that don't work for you. And the third reason you don't want to use a cut and paste is sometimes they will cut and paste it in a way that it's clearly a cut and paste. I co-authored one with a gal one time. She goes, I've just got a couple more I'll do for you. I'll use the model that we already started with. And she took my cut and paste, which is not designed to be used. It's designed to be to be modified, right? Which we had already modified in creating a couple of intros. And she cut and pasted into an email, and this matters, and you'll see why. And she started with an opening line in her natural language, my cut and paste, closed in an opening line or closing line in her natural language, different font and font size. Right? If she had used LinkedIn, at least at LinkedIn, all the formatting is the same, right? I'm like, could it be any clearer that you cut and pasted? Right? I'd have been better off just saying, no, just we'll get into another meeting to do those other ones, right? Okay. Anyway, that's what I want to say about that. Okay, you want to be co-authoring these because you want them to land right. You want them to serve your purposes and the purposes of the other person. Okay. Stephanie, you got breakouts going, or can I do it real quick? I can do it real quick. Okay, there we go. What? She's already got it built out. All right, she's going to hit open rooms, guys. Look for the little blue button. We'll spend about 10 minutes in there. Should be all it takes for you guys to figure out, and then when you co-created it, put it in the chat box. I'll put that, I'll broadcast into the room when everybody's in there. Are you seeing a button in front of you, Delnor? There we go. Chris, are you seeing a button? He's frozen, so that must mean he's about to disappear on me. There we go. I'm going to pause the
Hey.
recording.